let's get into the news. Today we're going to be talking about this news story that came out yesterday. Afghanistan says airstrikes launched on Pakistan. Islamabad says drones shot down. We have Afghanistan's Taliban said they launched airstrikes into Pakistani territory, while Islamabad said its forces had intercepted and shot down 4 rudimentary drones in the southern resource-rich province of Balochistan. Tuesday's exchanges were the latest in a series of clashes between the South Asian neighbors. Afghanistan's defense ministry said its forces launched airstrikes on what it said was an ISIS center in the town of Saranan in Pakistan's border province of Balochistan, as well as elsewhere in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. In a statement, Pakistan's military said the drones were spotted immediately and neutralized. Provincial authorities confirmed the drone attack and said a drone was sighted near a government school in Saranan. 2 people were injured, officials said. Afghanistan has no fighter jets, but is known to possess at least 6 aircraft and 23 helicopters. Data from the London-based International Institute for Strategic Studies shows. The Taliban forces are also known to have drones that have been used in fighting with Pakistan. Pakistan accuses Afghanistan of harboring militants it blames for plotting attacks in Pakistan. The Afghan Taliban denies the accusation, saying militancy is Pakistan's internal problem. At least 28 civilians were killed and 49 injured in Monday's airstrikes by Pakistan on its border in Afghanistan in what Islamabad called retaliation for terrorist attacks on its soil. The conflict between the allies turned foes has killed hundreds of people this year, with no results yet from efforts to ease tensions mediated by China. Okay, this is so interesting. Afghanistan doing more for Israel. So, look, here's what we've been talking about with Afghanistan, with what's been going on, right? First thing we know is that the current government of Afghanistan is the Taliban. And the Taliban is aggressively trying to normalize relations with the rest of the world now to be seen and taken seriously as a government, as an actual legitimate government of Afghanistan. And people have varying reactions to this. Sorry, my allergies have been really bad this week, so you guys are hearing me sniffle a lot. So they are, struggling with this. They're trying to align themselves more with Iran, more with Russia. People are very unsure of how seriously to take them as a government. Russia is really the first to kind of put their toe in the water and be like, okay, we'll do some trade deals with you, things like this. Oh my God, hi, welcome, the Alberta Socialist. So this is what's going on. So this is very, very interesting what they have going on. I think it's also interesting that Reuters is referring to them as Afghan Taliban. There is no functional oppositional government in Afghanistan. This is now the government of Afghanistan, whether people like it or not. So I think positioning it that way is interesting from an information control perspective. It's still attempting to delegitimize them as the government. And a lot of countries, again, are very skeptical of this new government and what they're supposed to do. So we actually have this article they referenced in Reuters to explain the previous relationship between Pakistan and Afghan Taliban. So let's read through it together. Bill Dog, that's interesting. You can say the same thing about any religious group. I don't know why you would single out Muslims like that. Right? That's weird. So Pakistan has been the Afghan Taliban's closest friend for decades. It was Islamabad that helped give birth to the Taliban in the early 1990s as a way to give Pakistan strategic depth in its rivalry with India. So what has gone wrong? On Monday night, Pakistan carried out an airstrike on Afghan capital in Kabul. Now, this is older, all right? This is from March 16th, okay? So they're saying in March, Pakistan carried out an airstrike on Afghan capital Kabul, the latest attack and fighting between the neighbors that has flared in recent weeks. The Afghan Taliban, again, because the West is like, oh, yeah, all right. Are you a government of Afghanistan? They are the government of Afghanistan, though, whether people like it or not, right? They are. So it said at least 400 people were killed and 250 injured in the strike on a drug rehabilitation hospital, but Pakistan rejected the claim, saying it targeted military installations and terrorist support infrastructure. I do really feel like they are trying to be like, we're a normal country now. We're just in charge of the country, and that is a lot of this. So when they say, for example, you bombed a drug rehab hospital. That's, I think, also trying to be like, we're a normal country with people here, and we're doing normal country people things, whether you like us or not. You bombed a hospital. And this is a very hard position, I think, for a lot of people to psychologically take on, right? Because if they are the only functioning government of Afghanistan, they are responsible for the Afghan people at the current time. So you can't just bomb Afghanistan and be like, we're bombing the Taliban. That's the government of Afghanistan now. You're bombing Afghanistan. So very, very interesting. Amanda Opp says Pakistan also has a Taliban group operating within its borders. Specifying Afghan Taliban might be to distinguish between the two groups. That makes sense. But again, why not just say Afghanistan? Right? You don't have to say the Taliban. You could just say Afghanistan, the Afghani government. But it's because people are very... It's a very delicate situation, I guess, with the West, because the West, I think, really wants to delusionally believe that there's somebody else that's going to step up to challenge this. And I don't think anybody's stepping up to challenge this. I think this is the government of Afghanistan now, and the whole world is going to have to start to get used to it. So Pakistan's defense minister said last month that escalating tensions between the two Islamic neighbors amounted to an open war. Oh, and again, I want to point out, if the Taliban being in charge of Afghanistan was actually bad news for the West, we would have a coup stage there in a minute. I don't think it's like we don't have the military power to take on the Taliban in Afghanistan. I think for us, for the United States, for Europe, for, this kind of like global North, super friends, Western white people alliance thing, I don't think that this is that disadvantageous to us. Otherwise, we'd probably be stepping in going, we don't like this government, let's replace it with something else. So I think for the West, we're like, could be worse. Let's see what they got going on. Oh, which is interesting. Very, very interesting. Optically, they know they can't come out and be like, we left the Taliban in Afghanistan. But practically, structurally, they would change the government if it was that big of a deal to them. It's not like we don't do that, right? So, something interesting. Later that month, Pakistan carried out multiple airstrikes on Afghanistan's major cities. The air and ground strikes, which hit Taliban military posts, headquarters and ammunition depots in multiple sectors along the border, came after Afghanistan launched an attack on Pakistani border forces, officials said. Earlier, border clashes between the two countries killed dozens of soldiers in October until negotiations facilitated by Turkey, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia ended the hostilities and a fragile ceasefire was put in place. The escalating conflict is a long way from Islamabad's historic support for the Taliban. The key questions. Pakistan welcomed the return to power of the Taliban in 2021, when then Prime Minister Imran Khan said that Afghans had, quote, broken the shackles of slavery. But Islamabad soon found that the Taliban were not as cooperative as it had hoped. Islamabad says that the leadership of militant group Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, and many of its fighters are based in Afghanistan, and that armed insurgents seeking independence for the southwestern Pakistani province of Balochistan also use Afghanistan as a safe haven. Militancy has increased every year since 2022, with attacks by the TTP and Baloch insurgents growing, according to Armed Conflict Location and Event Data, a global monitoring organization. Balochistan. Thank you. I can't pronounce anything. Balochistan. Kabul, for its part, has repeatedly denied allowing militants to use Afghan territory to launch attacks in Pakistan. The Afghan Taliban says Pakistan harbors fighters from its enemy, ISIS, now IS, they don't call it ISIS anymore, Islamic State, a charge Islamabad denies. Islamabad says the ceasefire did not hold due to the continued militant attacks in Pakistan from Afghanistan, and there have been repeated clashes and border closures since then that have disrupted trade and movement along the rugged frontier. So what sparked the latest clashes? This is again back in March, though. The day before the February strikes, Pakistani security forces said they had irrefutable evidence that militants in Afghanistan were behind a recent wave of attacks and suicide bombings which targeted Pakistani military and police. The sources listed 7 planned or successful attacks by militants since late 2024 that they said were connected to Afghanistan. One attack that killed 11 security personnel and 2 civilians in Bajar district, that week was undertaken by an Afghan national, according to Pakistani security forces. And this attack was claimed by the TTP. Like, they said they did it, right? So that's the Pakistan Taliban. The TTP, the Pakistan Taliban, was formed in 2007 by several militant outfits active in northwest Pakistan. It's commonly known as the Pakistani Taliban. The TTP has attacked markets, mosques, airports, military bases, police stations, and also gained territory mostly along the border with Afghanistan, but also deep inside Pakistan, including the Swat Valley. The group was behind the 2012 attack on then schoolgirl Malala Yousafzai. I've never pronounced her last name out loud. Yousafzai. Okay. Who received the Nobel Peace Prize 2 years later. The TTP also fought alongside the Afghan Taliban against U.S.-led forces in Afghanistan and hosted Afghan fighters in Pakistan. I'm very interested in what's up with the United States and Afghanistan right now. I hadn't thought about that. We're going to open up a new tab after we're done with this, and we're going to research what's been going on with the U.S. military operations in and around Afghanistan currently. Pakistan has launched military operations against the TTP on its own soil with limited success, although an offensive that ended in 2016 drastically reduced attacks until a few years ago. Pakistan is likely to intensify its military campaigns, analysts say, while Kabul's retaliation could come in way of raids on border posts and more cross-border guerrilla attacks to target security forces. The fighting had ebbed after China, which has a good relationship with both countries, intervened and sought to cool tensions, but it's flared again amid the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran in the neighborhood. On paper, there's a wide mismatch between the military capabilities of the two sides. At 172,000, the Taliban have less than a third of Pakistan's personnel. The Taliban do possess at least 6 aircraft, 23 helicopters, but their condition is unknown, and they have no fighter jets or effective air force. Well, from April of this year, thank you, Miss MM2. Pakistan's armed forces include more than 600,000 active personnel, more than 6,000 armored fighting vehicles, and more than 400 combat aircraft, according to 2025 data. The country is also nuclear armed. Yeah, Taliban in Afghanistan, you're not doing so well. Okay, so we have here, courtesy of Ms. MM2 in the chat, April 16th, 2026, statement from Chairman of the Afghanistan Withdrawal Special Review Panel, Sean Parnell. So the Afghanistan Withdrawal Special Review Panel has completed the substantive phase of its interviews with senior military and civilian leaders. This panel was established by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth at the direction of President Donald J. Trump to conduct the most comprehensive military after-action review in modern history. I just want to say, when did he add the little sassy J to his name as a permanent feature? Because I feel like we all just knew him as Donald Trump. Is this now he's in politics, there's the J? Is that supposed to psychologically branding-wise separate him in our minds and make us take him more seriously because he has a middle initial now? I'm very, very interested in this. Because, I grew up, he was just Donald Trump. Now he's Donald J. Trump all of a sudden. And I feel like it's got to be a branding thing. In his head, that makes him feel serious. I don't know. Just a thought. It is a little sassy. It's a little interesting. It feels weird to say. Yeah, because as Veggie Burton's saying, you don't hear people say it that way. So it feels a little weird. So they're saying, we've now interviewed key figures involved in planning and execution of the withdrawal, including General David Berger from the Marine Corps, General Christopher T. Donahue, who had previously been of U.S. Army Europe and Africa Command. Oh, still is. Current commander, sorry. Former commanding general of the 82nd Airborne Division, current AFRICOM Command guy, as well as Europe. Central Alexis G. Grinikwich, USAF. Okay, so he's the current Supreme Allied Commander of Europe. God, these titles. It sounds real dystopian. What's your job? What do you do for a living? Well, I'm the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe. Or does it mean you, work for the EU? Nope, in the United States. Yep. I get it. I get that it's, in command of our operations involving Europe. But it just sounds real fashy. Real, YA dystopian novel or something. It's very, very weird. Okay. So we also got a guy who used to be in charge of U.S. Central Command. We got a NATO Resolute Support Mission dude, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. These are all the people working on withdrawing from Afghanistan for the United States. I mean, I think James J. Mingus is maybe the worst just name in terms of a name on this list. Not him as a person necessarily is the worst. But just, it's a bad name. Which, you have a beautiful baby boy. What are you going to name him? James J. Mingus. Ugh. That's crazy. That's an awful name. But what could you name somebody with the last name Mingus that wouldn't be ridiculous? The first thing that came to my mind was Fingus. That's not even a name. Jingus. And he goes big dialecticals, and I had the same thought. Something that rhymes. Bingus. Bingus Mingus. J.G. Wentworth Mingus. Yeah, this is just... I guess all hope is lost for you if your family name is Mingus from the jump. All right, we got a former Marsent commander. I actually don't know what Marsent commander is. Do you guys know what Marsent is? Oh, Marine Corps Forces Central Command. Marsent. Okay, it's a Marine Corps thing. I'm like, what the fuck is that one? All right. We got some more Marine Corps guys. Okay. We got General Ricky. I don't know. I just feel like if you're at this stage, you should start going by Richard. I don't think you should be Ricky in this position where you're in charge of the slaughter of several innocent people. I don't want to be killed by the U.S. government in any capacity, but especially not by a guy named Ricky. That's kind of weird too to me. Okay. All right, we got a U.S. Forces Afghanistan guy. That one makes a little bit more sense. Director of Strategic Policy and Plans for the U.S. Southern Command as well. His name's Julian C. Cheater. I feel like his ex-wife maybe did a name change without him knowing to spite him one day. That's also a bad name. These men have bad names. And then we got somebody from the Department of War, of course, Special Access Program Central Office. It's not big. And somebody from the Joint Task Force Crisis Response, current commanding general, 2nd Marine Division. Okay, so they interviewed these guys, and they also interviewed 9 million documents drawn from multiple agencies and prior Defense Department efforts. And they're trying to figure out how to audit basically our presence in Afghanistan based on this after the withdrawal. Do we have currently, here's my question next. Did we withdraw everybody? Are there still U.S. troops in Afghanistan? There's got to be still. There's no way we're all out of there. We're not all out of there. We can't be out of there, can we? Is there anybody left? Okay, 2026. What's up? We got nobody in there? That's what I'm supposed to believe? I don't believe we got nobody in there. This is from 2023 from the U.S. government. What's this? CENTCOM is telling us 8,400 troops. That was 2016. That doesn't fucking help me. Biden was advised to keep 2,500 troops there. Huh. I'm looking. There was Trump's criticism of the Biden withdrawal. Completely removed every U.S. asset. The remaining assets are assets. They withdrew all of them. But we haven't put anybody back in there. There's nobody back in there. We got nobody there right now? Here's what I remember. I remember we took everybody out, and then the Taliban was like, thanks, bye, our country now. And then everyone's like, good job, United States government. Now the Taliban's in charge. I definitely remember that. But I guess I feel like two things. First of all, are we ever really fully out of anywhere? I just have a hard time believing we're ever really fully out. To me, a complete withdrawal is like there's still 2,000 guys hanging out somewhere on 3 hidden bases. So maybe that's me though. Maybe that's my bad. Maybe when somebody tells you who they are, you need to believe them. And when they said we took out everyone, maybe I should have believed them, right? Maybe I should have believed them. They're care workers in Afghanistan, but not Department of Defense. We did replace the Taliban with the Taliban. I remember this, as Khalti Musa is saying. Congratulations, years later, you successfully replaced the Taliban with the Taliban. That was the whole thing about us getting out of there. And then I'm like, you're telling me right now, Donald Trump, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, doesn't have dudes in Afghanistan? We got dudes everywhere. We got dudes in every single country. I just have a hard time believing it. I don't believe it. Military, there are no official troops on the ground. CIA assets, special ops, who knows? We've got to be doing something there. I just have a hard time believing we'd be full hands off of any country on the planet, if I'm being perfectly honest. There's got to be something going on there. There's got to be somebody there. Now, we do have this interesting story published around a week ago. It's the Afghanistan Reckoning. And I feel like this might be about the past, but it might also just be good. Just for those of us who aren't 40, to just remember what was really going on here. And this, I think, is good context. Okay. From May 10th, they mentioned the final withdrawal, Miss MM2 says, but I don't believe. Yeah, I don't really believe it. Maybe that's literally just me. I'm like, you're lying. They're in there. Yes. Okay. All right, we're going to read that. We're going to read that, and we're going to read this. And this is going to be the context we get on this. Surely we have some guy there with the title of the Butcher of Afghanistan and Radio Free whatever. Yeah, Khalti Moves. This is what I think, too. Malware says the U.S. doesn't need a presence in a country if they're completely destabilized. There's no stabilizing influence in the country other than the Taliban. They will collaborate with the U.S. out of self-preservation. That's true. Yeah. And it's also what I mean when I'm like, look, if this wasn't working for us, they wouldn't be in power. It's pretty true of almost any country in the world unless that country's leadership has wide popular support. If there's a leadership of a country that's not working for us, they have to have so much fucking support amongst the masses that we know anybody we replaced them with, there would be riots in the streets and we could not rest. So that is the only thing that keeps us from replacing a government. I don't think the people of Afghanistan are super, super passionate about their Taliban government. It's not like if we removed them, people would be like, give them back, right? So if they're there, it's because we're actually kind of fine with that. And it's almost like we only were in Afghanistan, not actually to defeat the Taliban, as we said, but, you know, because it was economically advantageous to us in some other capacity, right? So, yeah, let's get into the backstory of this. For anybody who didn't grow up with this plastered all over the news in your childhood, we have a foreign affairs story that just came out this week, so it might have some updates at the end is my guess, and some references to how they're relevant to the past. 5 years ago, the 20-year American war in Afghanistan came to an inglorious end. In April of 2021, the United States had begun its final withdrawal with the goal of pulling out the 2,500 U.S. troops that remained in the country by September. Within weeks of the first U.S. departures, the Taliban had swept up scores of positions as Afghan government forces melted away. I totally remember this happening in real time, too. By early August, the group had taken control of the most provincial capitals. Finally, on August 15th, 2021, the U.S.-backed government in Kabul collapsed. Hundreds of thousands of terrified Afghans besieged the city's airports. Roughly 220,000 were evacuated in plane loads by the United States, its allies, and even groups of private citizens. In a heartbreaking final blow, 13 American service members died in a suicide bombing at the airport 4 days before the last U.S. soldier departed on August 30th. 2 decades of heroic effort had ended in shame. Now, keep in mind, this is Foreign Affairs magazine. Heroic effort. It's doing a lot of editorial work there in that sentence. I don't know about that. So, recriminations followed, some justified, some not. The same group that had harbored al-Qaeda while it planned and carried out the 9/11 attacks had triumphantly returned to power, and fears of a resurgent terrorist threat mounted. After all, the main reason that successive American presidents had decided to keep U.S. forces in the country for so long was the belief that without them, Afghanistan would once again become a safe haven for terrorists, even if the Taliban did not manage to take full control. Nothing of the sort occurred. Over the past 5 years, not a single act of terrorism against the United States was carried out by a group based in Afghanistan. Washington spent roughly $1 trillion on the war. More than 120,000 Afghan civilians were killed or injured. More than 775,000 American service members were deployed to Afghanistan. More than 20,000 were injured, and more than 2,000 died. All to defend against a threat that turns out to have been exaggerated. Who could have guessed this? If American officials had known then what they knew now, many of them, including me, would have argued more strongly for an earlier withdrawal. They knew. Everybody knew. This is an uncomfortable point of view to adopt. It calls into question the judgment of leaders, the effectiveness of the policy process, and the value of the entire effort. Washington might have seen a better outcome, or at least a shorter war, if officials had been more seriously debating withdrawal earlier, considering a wide range of threat assessments, pursuing negotiation sooner, and in some cases recognizing the bias instilled by a distaste for defeat. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. 5 years on, the greatest danger is not that a terrorist safe haven might once again emerge in Afghanistan. I want to say this too. We get into war situations for economic reasons, usually, right? For access to oil, whatever. Afghanistan was a post-9/11 war. All of these post-9/11 wars were heavily influenced by oil access, oil trade. So there's that. But once we're in these wars, I think people really forgot the United States is bad at war. We don't do war well. The only way we can do war well is if we sucker punch people in the middle of the night and it's not a war whatsoever. It's a highly tactical, specialized military operation, right? It only affects one very specific geographic area. Or we're dropping bombs and fighting with drones or whatever. But that we've even got worse at because other countries are catching up to us in terms of technology. We're not great at fighting wars. So we can't just take an L on the public stage because our military is a paper tiger, right? It looks big and scary. We spend so much money on it. It's very easily defeated though. It's not actually very, very strong. So one of the reasons we stay in these wars forever is because we can't make it look like we lost. We can't withdraw too early, or people would know it's all bullshit, it's all a sham. That our military is actually not anything to write home about at the end of the day. We're spending a lot of money on it, but in a capitalist system that rewards broken aircrafts, poorly functioning military equipment, just to make our defense contractors rich. It's a racket. It's a money laundering racket, so where our politicians can give money to their rich guy friends who in turn give money to support their campaigns. through government contracts. So this is why we end up in these wars forever, to not admit defeat. And if you wait long enough, people don't really remember what the goal was when we went there to begin with. So if you withdraw, it doesn't really look like defeat, right? Who remembers why we were there? Maybe we did accomplish what we were doing. We've been there a really long time. Surely it's done by now. But if you leave 8 months later with your tail tucked between your legs, well, what does that say to the world? Right? As Miss MM2 says, yes, you think we would have learned this from the Vietnam War. But no, people don't believe the facts. They believe the mythology. And the mythology is that the United States is some great, very strong superpower. And it is true, we can enact terror upon vulnerable people around the world. When it comes to an actual war, for all of our money and might and size, we are not delivering like the promise we've made to the world is. Right? Yes, it may be dog shit, Malrich says, but at least it's unfathomably expensive. Right. It's a money laundering thing here, right, at the end of the day, for capitalism. The only winners of the war, Ghost in His House says, is the military-industrial complex. Exactly. So yeah, this is all totally true. And Sean Meat says, feel like that's the U.S. play in Iran currently. Actually, just wait for people to get mad about gas prices, start blaming Iran for getting the U.S. started, the whole thing. Exactly. We're just going to let it, and this is what I said. You guys probably remember. When this first happened, Donald Trump was like, it's going to be 2 weeks. And I said, if it's not 2 weeks, it's going to be years. Like, it's just going to drag on and on and on and on and on. Because this is what we do, right? So, we'll see. Now, a graver threat, they say, comes with the collective forgetting. Today, the longest American war rarely figures in public discourse. Americans occasionally acknowledge the noble sacrifices that thousands of U.S. service members made in the conflict. But the country moved on, eager to forget those final days. The riskiest form of forgetting would be for American leaders to fail to recall how perilous it proved to accept high costs and terrible losses, all in response to the fears of the moment. Remembering that will help them avoid future anguish. Escaltimos says, yeah, destabilizing the world, making it a worse place does in fact serve U.S. interests. On October 7th, 2001, George W. Bush invaded Afghanistan in retaliation for the 9/11 attacks that had stunned the world. I was a sophomore in high school when this happened. I remember this day. Within months, a combination of U.S. air power, special operations forces, intelligence operatives, and the Afghan militia, known as the Northern Alliance, had chased out al-Qaeda and upended the Taliban regime led by Mullah Omar. A new government was formed under the Afghan leader Hamid Karzai. For the next 4 years, the country was deceptively peaceful. This initial success helped tempt the Bush administration into invading Iraq in 2003, leading to a brutal war that captured most of Washington's attention for the next 5 years. During that time, the Taliban regrouped. By 2006, they were regaining territory and seriously challenging the Afghan government. Throughout this period, the United States was gripped by a fear of terrorism. The anxiety fed not only the horrors of 9/11, but also the anthrax attacks that followed in their wake and a series of lethal jihadist bombings and foiled plots in Europe in the mid-2000s. So for anybody not alive during this time, I've talked about this before. I know me and Malrich have made jokes about this before. So this was, you were in elementary school. They had the TVs on. Yeah, that was crazy. For those of you who don't know, millennials are like this, if you're Gen Z or younger, because they showed us 9/11 while it was happening on television sets in our schools. They were like, bring out the TV. And they wheel out this giant fucking TV that's like this thick in the back, right? Just massive TV. We didn't have flat screen TVs yet. It's on a cart. And they bring it out and they plug it into the wall. And they just pull it on TV. And we're children. And they're like, these people are jumping to their deaths from a burning building. And we're all like, what's going on? They showed us that. And they didn't just show it to us once. It's like every class you went into, they just replayed it. Like you were just watching it for days. Just over and over and over and over again. As children. Yeah. And I remember, like, I was in high school, and there were people that were like, do they have, like, nets on the ground to catch them? Like, wondering. And everyone's just like, oh, no, they're just dying. Like, there was, like, this incredulity even with high school kids that they would just be showing us people leaping to gruesome, horrible, tragic deaths. Spoiler alert, the reason why they were leaping to their deaths is because the fire made the ground so hot inside of the buildings that the people on the top floors could not stand on the ground because their shoes were melting. So they had no choice but to leap out of the buildings to their death because it was more comfortable of a death than burning from the foot up from the flames underneath them and the other floors. It was horrible, 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 bad deaths. And all I could think too is like, at your fucking job, your shitty job you don't even want to be at, you go to work, you don't even want to fucking be there, you're just thinking about getting off of work, and then this happens, bad fucking death, right? Bad death. So they're just showing us this. So this is why we're all fucking deranged. You know, it's very, very weird. So this happened, and what occurred next was a couple of things. So I'm just going to try to give you guys like the psychological understanding of the country at this time, and why we ended up in all of these fucking wars. The post 9/11 wars. The war on terror is a misnomer because it's not one war. It's many different wars that happened after 9/11. So this occurs, and immediately the fear-mongering begins. The government isn't saying it outright, but it's like, what will be next? They're probably going to bomb something next. This couldn't be the only one. They probably have a plan. It's like a global terrorist network. Who are they gonna come for next? Maybe you. My aunt in Fresno, California, was terrified to leave her house because she was convinced the terrorists, doesn't matter who, right? And all of these different groups and countries are getting conflated to each other. We obviously know Osama bin Laden, a byproduct of U.S. meddling in the region, right? He trained at a CIA training camp, whatever. But all of these different Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, your average American didn't know who these groups were or how they interacted with each other, didn't know how big they were, didn't know where they were. My aunt was terrified to leave her house in Fresno, California because she thought the terrorists, that's just what we call them as a culture, the terrorists. We don't know who they are. We don't know. We're going to bomb Fashion Fair Mall. She's a mall in Fresno, California. Okay, just for reference. So this is the level of like mass hysteria hitting your average American at the moment. All right. And everyone thinks their town's about to get bombed. Anthrax starts showing up, getting mailed around. I don't even know how many people actually got anthrax. We all were not checking our mail because we were like, people are mailing us anthrax to kill us. And this is the great reckoning. Every other country in the world is now destroying the United States because they're so jealous of our freedom. That was also what we were told. They hate us for our freedom. Why do they want to kill us? Not because we destabilized and destroyed their countries. No. They want to kill us because they're jealous of our freedom. And that was the lie that was being told. So we're like, we're so free. So we're afraid to leave the house or check our mail, right? Because suddenly there's some element of the U.S. foreign policy is actually coming home and affecting us. Yeah, France hates us. France is like, we're not getting involved in any of your shit, United States. The United States is like, France has betrayed us. As Bigatko has eloquently reminded us, everything with the word France in it is renamed freedom because they hate us so much for our freedom. Our freedom is the most important thing. We don't have French fries anymore. We got freedom fries as a culture. Yeah, it was fucking crazy. And then George W. Bush gets on TV and is like, Afghanistan did 9/11. Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Taliban, Al-Qaeda, that's how he's pronouncing it, are all in Iraq and Afghanistan with the weapons of mass destruction, and we gotta kill them all. Yeah. And the average American is like, yes. Iraq and Afghanistan are one place. They have weapons of mass destruction and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And they're mailing us anthrax, and they're going to bomb the mall in my hometown because they're jealous of our freedom. Also, freedom fries, we hate France. We hated France. We fucking hated France. Now, that's what's going on. Next thing that happens, white men lose it. White men in the United States lose it. They start going out committing hate crimes like you've never seen before. Anybody with brown skin who looks vaguely Middle Eastern, they start beating them up on the streets. Sikhs, they don't know what a Muslim person is or a Sikh person is. They've been convinced that the Muslims did this because they're jealous of our white people freedom. It was all Muslims wanted to kill us now. So they would start attacking Sikh men on the street. Muslims too, actual Muslims, obviously, of course. Sometimes just Mexican people, brown people, Latin American people. They didn't know, they didn't care. It looked brown to them. So there's this mass fear if you weren't white in the United States. And this is what ICE was created out of, right? So ICE gets created to hunt down all of those Muslim immigrants in our borders threatening to harm us 9/11 style and blow up the mall in your hometown that your aunt is terrified of getting blown up. So then that happens. Then you got vigilante white men roaming the streets attacking brown people. You got ICE gets created. They're like, we'll formalize it. We'll put them in uniforms and send them out with guns. Go find those brown people. They flew here on a plane. Nobody will ever enter here on a plane again. So that's where ICE comes from. Then we introduce, what's the fucking document? The big document. The one that's like, you have no rights anymore. What the fuck? I can't fucking remember. They introduced this big old law. It's like, you got no rights anymore. They're gone. Patriot Act. Thank you. Patriot Act. Yeah, real patriotic. Now you got no rights. The government's just looking at everything you do. You got no freedoms. No, nothing. So then that happens. So this is the most chaotic fucking 3-year period in the United States. And you're just like, oh shit. So then me and David, podcast co-host, we're sophomores in high school. We're like, yeah, this feels like we did this somehow. So, me, I start learning. I'm like, why do they hate us? What do they hate? Oh, turns out we've been fucking destabilizing this region for forever. Oh, okay. That's what's going on. And that's when, we all joined the protest movement. We were radicalized after 9/11. And we realized this is really an excuse, right, to control the flow of oil. So that's what's going on here. But just to give people, sorry, there was a long digression, but I just want to give you the context for what this felt like at this time. Now, at this time, George W. Bush could have said anything about foreign policy, and the United States would have believed him. Would have felt it was their patriotic duty to support whatever he wanted to do. He wants you to go to war in Iraq? Yeah, we got it because of the terrorists. This is why this is important. Afghanistan, yeah, fuck them. Yeah, we better go to war there too, right? Miss MM2, what he said, when they struck, they wanted to create an atmosphere of fear. And one of the great goals of the nation's war is to restore public confidence in the airline industry. It's to tell the traveling public, get on board, do your business around the country, fly and enjoy America's great destination spots, get down to Walt Disney World in Florida, take your family, enjoy life the way we want it to be enjoyed. Yeah, that was this other thing. It's like, don't be scared. They want you to be scared. Go out and spend money. It was very fucking deranged. So these wars, though, the point of me telling you all this is that when these wars were sold to us, we would have bought anything. The average people, not all. A lot of us were more politically active. We started as getting radicalized in politics, etc. But for the average American, they would have believed anything. You could have sold any foreign policy agenda you wanted during this time, and George W. Bush did. George W. Bush really did. Don't let the terrorists win, Ghost in this Hell says. Yeah, they used to tell us that as a manipulation tactic, for sure. Very, very interesting. This is what radicalized millennials. We saw the people jumping to their deaths on TV. We Googled why. Sorry, we asked Jeeves why. We learned, and then we were like, oh, fuck this, right? And they told us to save the economy by shopping. So true. Yep, they were like, go shop. Go spend more money. That'll teach the terrorists. And fuck France. Fuck them. Fuck them. Yeah. So this is how we ended up getting the global war on terror, which was treated by Americans not only as acceptable, but our duty. Patriotic somehow. So this says the global war on terror was raging and Afghanistan was the main theater. Keep in mind, Afghanistan, people literally believed Afghanistan did 9/11. They would tell you that. Afghanistan did 9/11. And you'd be like, Afghanistan didn't do 9/11. It was a group of people from multiple different countries. Afghanistan didn't do 9/11. But it didn't matter. The average American believed in their heart that Afghanistan did 9/11, and that's why we had to go there. Countering terrorism, the article says, was unquestionably the center of U.S. military activity in the country, a mission articulated by presidents, secretaries of defense and state, military commanders, and intelligence chiefs. The United States had other ambitions in Afghanistan as well, including a nation-building mission that aimed to establish a sustainable democracy. Bush declared this goal explicitly, and in spite of his successor's efforts to back away, it remains an implicit part of the American project. But without the terrorist threat, there would have been no war against the Taliban, no arming and training of the Afghan military, no nation-building, no democracy promotion. Terrorism was always the driving concern. It's what we were sold. For many of the men and women on the ground, the mission justifies the efforts and losses. As Ross Burkhoff, a U.S. Army lieutenant stationed at Kandahar in 2003, wrote in his diary, September 11, 2001 is a day that will live in infamy, and the fact that Afghanistan became a new place for U.S. soldiers to deploy is directly tied to that infamous day. I am here to respond. We are here in response. In a 2019 memoir, Kyle Carpenter, who fought in Afghanistan as a member of the U.S. Marine Corps, received the Medal of Honor, summed up his feelings about his service on behalf of the Americans. You are worth protecting. You are worth fighting for. You are worth time in a hospital bed and deep scars on my body. Keep in mind, these people did not protect America from anything. Afghanistan had nothing to do with 9/11, and Afghanistan was not doing a terrorist attack on us, right? I actually have something else, a few other things that I want to think of that would be good for us to talk about that I'm just going to try to find a source on really fast before I forget. Hold on just a second. There was this guy who came out years later who said, oh, we were not supposed to be here. And, there was this article he wrote. I wonder if I can find it. Maybe you guys remember it. But he was like, talks about the moment he realized they were torturing innocent people in Afghanistan. Do you guys remember this? Sorry, I'm just looking this up really fast. Maybe it was in Iraq. Maybe that's why. This one, maybe? Maybe this one. Let's see if this is it. This isn't the one, but this is interesting, and we should definitely look at this. Yeah, maybe he was in Iraq. Okay, we're gonna look at both of these. I found one too, so we'll look at them both. But yeah, this is also Abu Ghraib. Obviously, also came out at this time, but was in Iraq as well. Yeah, Abu Ghraib. So maybe that soldier was from Abu Ghraib in Iraq. There was just so much happening, so maybe I got it wrong. It was in Afghanistan. Sorry, but maybe it is. I don't know. We'll see. There's not to say the strategy was always clearly communicated or convincing. It made no sense. Many U.S. troops on the ground were not directly involved in counterterrorism or special operations missions. For some, engaging in firefights in remote mountains and deserts with local Taliban, being targeted by improvised explosive devices, and trying to build up the troubled Afghan government and army seemed a far cry from fighting dreaded international terrorists. Some developed deep skepticism about the purpose of the war, which could turn to resentment when fellow service members died or were wounded. From 2009 to 2011, I served as the U.S. State Department's political officer in Garmsur, a rural district in the southern province of Helmand. I was part of a small team of around half a dozen civilians attached to a U.S. Marine battalion, advising the district governor, the police, and local tribe and religious leaders. Just about every Afghan in the region believed that without U.S. forces backing a strong army and police force, the Taliban would return. A few claimed that al-Qaeda would come with them. As far as I could tell, there was little to suggest that al-Qaeda was active in Garmsur or elsewhere in the south. The truth was, the chances of the group's reviving its Afghan stronghold were impossible to measure with any confidence, and such a nebulous threat scarcely seemed commensurate with the 100,000 U.S. troops then in the country. By the time I left, I was heartened by the Marines' accomplishments. The Taliban had been pushed out of the vast majority of the district. An Afghan government official could travel unarmed from the top of the bottom to the bottom of the territory. Over 1,000 new Afghan soldiers and police officers were in place and active. I thought it was unnecessary for tens of thousands of U.S. forces to stay in Afghanistan, as long as a smaller number remained for the long term. In 2012, Cale Weston and I wrote in these pages that 25,000 U.S. advisor, special operations forces, and air and support personnel should stay. Otherwise, the Afghan central government would likely lose control of the Pashtun east and south, and, thrown on the defensive, would be unable to prevent the return of al-Qaeda to the vast Pashtun heartland. The country, we warned, would backslide quickly and perhaps irrevocably, taking with it the United States' ability to combat al-Qaeda. From 2013 to 2014, I was back in Afghanistan as a civil advisor to General Joseph Dunford. My pronunciation's getting worse. I just called him Joseph. Do we have a weird troll in the chat? What's he on? What was the nature of the weird troll? Yeah. Yeah, I do remember when Obama was going to close Guantanamo Bay. Crazy. Still there. Joseph Whedon. Joseph. So, Joseph Dunford. Remember, next time they tell you that I'm racist because I can't pronounce Kamala Harris's name correctly, remember that I once called a man Joseph Dunford? Commander of all U.S. and allied forces in Afghanistan. During those years, U.S. President Barack Obama had begun to withdraw American troops from Afghanistan, and by the time he left, fewer than 10,000 remained, and they were focused on turning the war over to the Afghan soldiers and police. In too many places, however, they were suffering setbacks. In the summer of 2014, at the strategic crossroads of Sangin and Helmand, hundreds of well-armed Afghan police and soldiers had been overrun by a Taliban offensive. That defeat heralded worse reversals that came in 2015 and 2016, all of which U.S. officials took as indicators that the Afghan government could not hold back the Taliban on its own, nor prevent the subsequent establishment of an al-Qaeda safe haven. For me, it was a sign that the cost of staying in Afghanistan had possibly become greater than the danger of terrorism that would come in the wake of the government's fall. It's crazy that in 2015 and 2016, they're still trying to convince everybody that we're there to protect the United States from terrorism in Afghanistan. Like, so crazy. Maurer says the odd thing about the withdrawal is that typically with that kind of conflict ending, you would have a UN peacekeeping force to move in afterwards. Never happened. Yeah, and we all know obviously the UN peacekeeping forces are garbage. Wasn't it a UN peacekeeping force that oversaw the capitalist area of what had been former Yugoslavia when the genocide occurred? It was a NATO-controlled territory with UN peacekeeping. But still, you would do something, theoretically, right? How did our freedom end up in Afghanistan and Iraq? Goes to the Self says they took it. They took it. So, for the rest of Obama's time in office and during the first term of President Donald Trump, the Afghan war was the focus of constant debate in the White House. The particulars changed over time, but the basic choice was always the same. Stay in the country with a small number of troops, a posture that was sustainable but potentially endless, or get out, meaning that sooner or later the government would fall and the terrorist threat would likely return. Terrorist threat. Afghanistan never was a terrorist threat to us. From 2012 onward, the intelligence community assessed that a terrorist capability to attack the United States could reconstitute in Afghanistan within 1 to 3 years after U.S. withdrawal. Trump retained the fundamentals of Obama's strategy until mid-2018 when it was decided to leave Afghanistan and pursue direct negotiations with the Taliban. Obama had allowed for talks between 2010 and 2014, but the effort was a low priority for his administration. By 2018, the strategic context had changed. A U.S.-led coalition had defeated Islamic State. I keep calling it ISIS. It's Islamic State, but I don't know if I'm the only person who is more familiar with the term ISIS than with Islamic State, so I feel the need to relate the two. So sorry about that. And in Iraq and Syria, the global terrorist threat was ebbing, and a bipartisan consensus was at last forming that the U.S. should wind down the war in Afghanistan. Trump's agreement with the Taliban, signed in February 2020, stipulated that Washington would withdraw all its military forces by May 2021. William from Gretnava. No, I'm a Marxist-Leninist. Most people here are Marxist-Leninists. In return, the Taliban promised not to allow al-Qaeda to recruit, train, or conduct operations from Afghanistan, although the Taliban refused to break relations with the group. On taking office in January 2021, U.S. President Joe Biden faced a hard choice: keep 2,500 troops in Afghanistan to suppress the terrorist threat, or leave in accordance with Trump's agreement. Either strategy was viable. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, and senior U.S. generals favored staying. They argued that the counterterrorism operations could be better maintained from inside Afghanistan and that the continued presence of American troops would prevent the defeat of the Afghan government. Biden himself was genuinely concerned about terrorism and acknowledged the possibility of a Saigon-like collapse. Okay, that guy, I do not trust what was genuinely concerning to him. That guy was a segregationist who loves Zionism. So I still don't think Afghanistan ever significantly proved to be a threat to us in terms of overseas terrorist activity, right? Whatever. For Biden, the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. contest with China, that's a real one. I can't believe they said that. And the struggling American economy were far greater worries. In April 2021, Biden announced that all U.S. military forces would withdraw by September 11th of that year. They chose 9/11 to do the withdrawal? Wait, what? How did I miss that? That's so weird. Why did they choose 9/11 to withdraw? Never forget. It's so interesting. Okay. Well, why not? The administration believed the Afghan government would hold out for at least 6 months after that point, but Kabul fell in August. And the Taliban have governed Afghanistan ever since, led by Maulawai Haibatullah Akhundzada. I nailed that one way faster than I nailed Joseph. Before taking the top position in 2016, he had been the chief judge of the Taliban's Islamic Court, a position that endowed his leadership with religious legitimacy in the eyes of many Afghans. He's said to have endorsed a suicide bombing by his own son in Helmand in 2018. Following in Mullah Omar's footsteps, Haibatullah rules not from Kabul, but from the traditional Taliban stronghold of Kandahar, and assiduously stays safe out of the public eye. In Kabul, meanwhile, the Minister of the Interior is Sirajuddin Haqqani, the leader of the terrorist group known as the Haqqani Network, and the mastermind of countless wartime suicide attacks, such as a truck bombing in front of the German embassy in 2017 that killed 150 Afghans and injured 400 more. The ascent of men like these is precisely the kind of outcome the U.S. officials feared when they contemplated a post-American Afghanistan. Yet far from ushering in a new age of chaos and carnage, Taliban rule has instead fostered a period of relative stability. So I just want to take a second to really think about this, okay? The United States is like, we have to be there to protect them from bad guys. The United States leaves, and the Taliban has presented more peace and stability in the region than the United States had, right? So this idea that the United States getting involved in any country is going to stabilize it or bring peace and stability is frankly fucking insane. Your worst American nightmare here in the United States, our biggest bads we've ever big bad, the Taliban, was able to offer more peace and stability to Afghanistan than the United States could. And I think that really gets to the crux of like why we have an anti-interventionist ideology. Why China, we see them favoring sovereignty and diplomacy above all else. Intervention is not ever going to be good for the people living there. And this is also what ties into when we were talking about war. I don't know if I was talking about this on Burger Ike stream or here, but the idea when people are like, Russia's committing war crimes in Ukraine. Yes, I bet they are. I bet Ukraine's committing war crimes too in the areas of Russia they've taken over. War leads to bad people doing, and not even bad people, just people doing bad things. War leads to innocent people getting killed. We know women disproportionately getting sexually assaulted in mass, no matter what side's doing it. This is a byproduct of war. War is bad. And that's why it should be avoided at all costs unless it's for a liberatory cause, right? Something that will liberate people actually. And when we look at what the United States is doing here, it's like this idea that we're going to show up and change everything and it's going to be better has no historical basis. We've never showed up somewhere, changed the government, and things got better. It's bad. And even against, I don't think any even American leftist is like, I love the Taliban. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to be like, yeah, we love the Taliban. But the fact remains that the Taliban being in charge of Afghanistan is better for it than the United States showing up there and intervening. And that's fucking crazy. That should tell you, one, how fucked up the United States is, but two, also the extent of the political utility of an interventionist mindset, right? Goes to this whole loves the Taliban. Okay, fine. It's like this is... If the Taliban is better at running a country than the U.S. military intervening is there, then what the fuck are we doing intervening anywhere, right? U.S. intervention, yes, as Rain Saber says, has never made anywhere better. So the country, they say, has been at peace for 5 years, the longest stretch since 1979, when a Soviet invasion was followed by decades of war. And again, remember, we had the whole communist scare in Afghanistan as well. The Rocky movies. Aren't the Rocky movies the Rocky movie message? Oh, that was the Mujahideen message it turned out to be fake. I don't think that was real. I think that was the Mujahideen Rocky thing. Do you guys know about this? Rambo, not Rocky. Other R movie? Rambo. I heard that the Mujahideen thing was not real. I heard it was a myth. He was the boxer, right? I don't like sports. I don't know. Rambo is the movie I should like, though, but I've never seen it all the way through. I think I've seen like little bits of it on TV as a kid. Charlie Wilson. Okay, wait. Where Rambo 3 was not dedicated to Osama bin Laden's resistance group. I really love just like the I don't even know, like the branding of the United States is very pleasing to me. Like, why is this a sentence? Rambo 3 was not dedicated to Osama bin Laden's resistance group. Like, only in the United States can you see this. We'll read that too. That feels important to me as well. We'll read about that. Little urban myth there. Yeah, this is a story about organizing on Super Bowl Sunday. Yeah, I don't understand. Rambo 3 was banned after 9/11 for a while? I do not remember that. Wow. Okay. We're gonna look. So, yeah, the country's been at peace for 5 years. Other than periodic attacks by the Islamic State, resistance to the regime has been minimal. Afghans consistently tell me the country is now aram, or calm. Since retaking control, the Taliban have not ruthlessly oppressed the Afghan people. The group has not systematically imprisoned its former adversaries or those who worked with the United States, its allies, or the Afghan government. Taliban governors and judges have generally permitted those people to go on with their lives. The biggest danger for them is violence carried out by low-level Taliban members with a grudge or local rivals looking for an excuse to settle old scores. Perhaps the most unexpected element of Taliban governance has been its ban on poppy cultivation that long made Afghanistan a major node in the international heroin trade. Poppy was a major source of revenue for the groups during the war, but in 2022, Hizbullah banned the cultivation, sale, and consumption of all narcotics. Enforced by public floggings and long prison sentences and backed by eradication efforts, the edict reduced the cultivation of poppy by approximately 95% in 2023, according to UN estimates. The Taliban have accomplished this feat even though doing so sharply reduced the tax revenues they could collect and negatively affected the livelihoods of perhaps a fifth of the population. Of course, there have also been significant setbacks. Economic growth has stagnated, poverty has worsened, healthcare has degraded with the cessation of international assistance. The most glaring fault is the plight of Afghan women. In 2022, Hizbullah issued edicts that banned girls from attending secondary school and universities. Women also face restrictions on working and on venturing outside of their homes without being escorted by a male relative. The deterioration of healthcare has been hitting women particularly hard because hospitals and clinics have been among the few places with personnel dedicated to their care. The cruelty of the policies is thrown into relief by the major strides in rights and opportunities that Afghan women in some parts of the country made in the decades after that the Taliban were out of power. Female income per capita doubled between 2000 and 2013. In Kabul, at least, a generation of Afghan women grew up with access to education, job opportunities, in a sense they could build lives of their own. The Taliban have extinguished those dreams. By far the most important turn of events for American and Western interests, however, has been the absence of terrorism. And think about this too. It's like, okay, all right, Western liberalism was able to give women jobs in healthcare, but also we created so much political instability. What is the actual trade-off there? What is the math that would be required to see if there was a payoff there that was actually worth it for Afghan women, right? I don't think that's possible math to do. There's no way to reach an actual mathematics solution about whether this was ultimately better or worse for women in Afghanistan. What good is a job that's not sustainable? By far the most important turn of events has been the absence of terrorism. There's little evidence to suggest that Al-Qaeda is organizing fundraising or training on Afghan territory. Seemingly, with the Afghan Emirates' permission, fighters and leaders from the Pakistani Taliban have taken refuge in Afghanistan, where they've launched 700 attacks on Pakistani soil. The resulting war has seen Pakistan bomb the Afghan cities of Bagram, Kabul, Paktia, and Kandahar, while Afghan forces have attacked Pakistani border posts. Meanwhile, the Islamic State maintains a few thousand fighters in Afghanistan who have conducted high-profile attacks on the Taliban government in Kabul. But for 5 years, no known terrorist attacks have been mounted from Afghanistan against the United States. Despite the Taliban's track record as enablers of Al-Qaeda and their failure to manage their country's economy, the group has not fostered global terrorism since 2021, but instead has contained it. A reversal cannot be entirely ruled out because Washington's ability to monitor Afghanistan is not what it was in 2020, let alone in 2011. The United States may be unable to detect terrorist plotting or training in mountain villages or in the back streets of Kabul, Kandahar, or Jalalabad. And in the past 5 years, we've not been without red flags. In 2022, a U.S. strike killed Ayman al-Zawahiri, who inherited the leadership of Al-Qaeda from Osama bin Laden at a guest house linked to Haqqani. In 2023, a team of UN investigators concluded there were still around 400 Al-Qaeda members in Afghanistan actively trying to rebuild a base of operations. Similarly, the Islamic State's Afghan affiliate could be stronger than it currently seems. It could shift its focus from undermining the Taliban to attacking Western interests. But the unmistakable fact is that so far, Taliban rule has been manageable for American interests. 5 years after the U.S. withdrawal, it is fair to say that the threat of terrorism, which drove American decision-making, was exaggerated. Okay, very, very interesting. Oh, wait, there's more. Shit, there's one more section. Losing is not an option. This is basically what we said. So the question that lingers then is why American officials so badly misjudged the risks and stayed. One factor was domestic politics. The war in Afghanistan never inspired much passion among ordinary Americans. So yeah, this is it. We just didn't want to look like we were losing. The parallel consensus. Okay, so that's it though. I think that's a pretty good reading. You can type now. Okay, when you're talking about the Cold War movie that fostered a war between Charlie Wilson's War. I remember Charlie Wilson's War. When you said Charlie Wilson, I was like, oh yeah, Charlie Wilson's War. Yeah, Afghanistan can be difficult to discuss. You're right. As Amanda Opp says, there's a ton of nuance. Nobody wants to talk about the country with that much nuance. It's very challenging. They've been made into cartoonish evildoers. I think there's certain things, though. Look, what makes being a Marxist-Leninist easy is that when it comes to foreign policy, U.S. intervention is never going to be beneficial for a place. At a certain point, it doesn't matter what's going on in that place, right? Short of something that's a liberation war, and everything tries to get pitched to you like a liberation war, but they're not liberation wars, right? And we know that. We know the difference. We're not stupid. Short of an actual liberation war, us showing up is not going to help anybody. It's not going to help anybody ever. And it's almost like a cheat sheet to having good foreign policy 100% of the time, right? It doesn't matter how good or bad the local government of any country is. The United States doesn't need to be there. We don't need to show up there. The United States, is not capable of providing liberation to anybody. We can't even liberate ourselves. And that makes it easy in a lot of ways for me as an American to talk about. Okay? And if you live in the global north, probably true as well. Okay, so let's move on, little palate cleanser, to our urban legends about the Mujahideen. The original ending of the hit film Rambo 3 included a dedication to the Mujahideen, the anti-Soviet resistance group in Afghanistan that Osama bin Laden was part of before he formed Al-Qaeda. Throughout the history of the United States, the U.S. has often employed what could be best described as the enemy of my enemy is my friend policies in terms of foreign engagement. This, of course, is a policy that is quite often looked back upon with some concern, as very often the enemy of my enemy eventually becomes my enemy. And then you have a case where you were friends with your future enemy, and it obviously looks fairly awkward. Okay, I'm just going to say, this guy, Brian Cronin, writing a blog post about Rambo 3, more political insight than the average political commentator on TikTok, okay? Oh, the screen. Sorry. The screen! So, this guy, Brian Cronin, this blogger who writes professionally about comic books, more political insight than your average TikTok political commentator, for sure. Bye, Miss MM2. The plane. Oh, this guy, smart. I would listen to this guy's hot takes about politics before most people on TikTok. Okay. So the alliance between Winston Churchill, Franklin Roosevelt, and Joseph Stalin probably helped win World War II. Never mind, I spoke too soon. Never mind. I thought he was going to go into Hitler. I thought he was going to do, the non-alignment pact, or the non-agreement pacts with Hitler. But no, he went Stalin. I always disappoint you in the end. You know what? I'm going to say still better than the average TikToker, somehow. All right. But the idea of being allies with Stalin would seem ridiculous just a few years later. Similarly, in late 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. The United States objected to the invasion and in fact pulled out the 1980 Summer Olympics being held in Moscow as part of its objection to the invasion. Okay. That refusal to take part in the 1980 Summer Olympics amusingly led to Marvel's first comic book miniseries, The Comic Book Writers. Also, if you guys don't listen to my podcast, I interviewed one of my commie friends who does a podcast all about comic books and communism, and I think it's really interesting. It was supposed to be our bonus episode, but I put it up for free as a teaser of what our bonus content is as well in the main. So you can, if you're into comic books, it's a good interview with a communist. Yeah, you have to listen. Yeah, it's great. I'm glad you liked it, Haley. And Nat has a podcast that's really good too. So throughout the 1980s, the United States lent moral and often financial support and even weapons through the United States Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, via intermediaries like the Pakistani and Saudi Arabian governments to the Mujahideen, the group of resistance fighters who fought back against the Soviet invasion. One of the Mujahideen fighters was a young man who had inherited his family's billion-dollar construction business. This young man, Osama bin Laden, first helped lend financial aid to the Mujahideen before he decided to directly enter the fray. During this period, there was a good deal of overlap between CIA aid to the Afghani resistance via Pakistan, but there was never a direct connection between the CIA and bin Laden, which obviously proved to be a good deal less embarrassing for the United States years later. It's like bin Laden went to a camp for training that was set up by the CIA, but they weren't there at the same time, kind of a vibe. No USSR command. Interesting. I need to make a resource doc. You see, towards the end of the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, bin Laden, frustrated with other leaders in the Afghani resistance, formed his own group with some other like-minded people called Al-Qaeda. The vast majority of Al-Qaeda's higher-ups were Mujahideen veterans. The Taliban government that eventually took control of Afghanistan after the Soviets withdrew gave Al-Qaeda cover to become an extremist terrorist group, and eventually the ire of Al-Qaeda was centered on the United States. following the Gulf War, when the Saudi Arabian government turned to the United States for protection from Iraq instead of bin Laden, which he found to be a disgrace, as allowing U.S. forces on sacred land was a religious debasement in his mind. Okay, it's like a little bit of an oversimplification. It wasn't just a religious debasement. Bin Laden was like, these Americans have been destabilizing our countries and stealing from us forever. How dare you side with them instead of people that are similar to you, instead of your people. And that did include religion, but also more than that, it was actually a critique of American foreign policy and imperialism. So just to put that out there. In the 1990s, Al-Qaeda increased its attacks on the United States, bombing the U.S.'s embassies in East Africa in 1998 and bombing the U.S. missile destroyer USS Cole in 2000. This, of course, culminated with Al-Qaeda organizing the attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon on September 11th, etc., etc. All right, so Rambo 3. So Rambo 3 was about John Rambo. His first name's John? His name's John Rambo? Horrible name. Mingus Rambo would have been a better name. Maybe Mingus works better as a first name, I think. I think we're learning a lot here. John Rambo. He's not a good name. Billy Rambo. No. Mingus. Why the fuck are there balloons? Okay, whatever. Mingus Rambo, I think, is the one. I think he's Mingus Rambo, yeah. Okay, so he's retired from fighting. He gets approached by his best friend, former Superior Colonel Sam Troutman. Man of Trout. Spelled different, though, so it's fine. Troutman is putting together a mercenary group to go fight against the dirty communists in Afghanistan. Rambo is like, no, right? Because he's secretly a communist. I added that part. I don't think that part's real. He says no, though. And then Troutman killed by the dirty communists. Troutman, oh, no, his group is killed. He's taken hostage. And Rambo's like, I gotta go get my friend back. So he teams up with the Mujahideen in Afghanistan to go kill some communists. And he is like, I'm going to free Troutman. And he succeeds. And in the climax of the film, Rambo, Troutman, and a bunch of other prisoners that Rambo helps escape are surrounded by the communists. And they're like, oh my God, we're going to die. No, but then thank God the Mujahideen arrives on horseback and saves the day. And then Rambo kills all the communists. Right? And he and Troutman escape with all the former prisoners. Okay. Mingus Rambo. So, then there's this urban legend that the end of the film had a dedication that said, this film is dedicated to the brave Mujahideen fighters of Afghanistan. And the legend says, after 9/11 happened, the film was pulled from the shelves. We still had video rentals at this time, for those of you who grew up in the era of streaming services. And it was changed to say, this film is dedicated to the gallant people of Afghanistan. All right, so this is supposed to be the change that occurred. All right, so, but that's not true. That's a lie. It always said the gallant people of Afghanistan. Womp womp. Urban legend. It's a myth. Osama bin Rambo. Osama Mingus bin Rambo. Shout out to a real one. Shout out to a real one. Okay. Let's get into talking a bit about, we got 13 more minutes to get into this Afghanistan topic. We're not going to have time to get into the other stuff today. But suffice it to say, the conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan, a little complicated. They've been fighting with each other. We got Taliban on both sides. You know, Taliban is the legitimate government of Afghanistan now, whether you like it or not. Nobody stepped up to really combat that. The United States doesn't seem to really have much of a problem with that necessarily. Pakistan is like, we don't like the Taliban in here being helped by the Taliban over there. And Afghanistan is like, stop attacking us. You're blowing up our schools. And Pakistan is like, you've literally got Taliban in our borders. And Afghanistan is like, we just are Taliban now. What do you expect us to do about that? Like, we're the government. And Americans are like, they are the government. It doesn't seem to be going that bad for us. So whatever. And how good or bad it is going is not really of our concern at the end of the day, I think. Right? That's kind of my assessment up to this point. It's the Taliban, I guess, is the government of Afghanistan. Is it better or worse than the government of the United States? Or of Israel? Or of Ukraine? I don't know. People aren't going to like hearing that Ukraine one. Sorry to upset you, but, it's true. I don't know how upset I'm supposed to be about this. I don't know how upset I'm supposed to be at this. I don't feel particularly more upset than most other countries' governments about this. You know, it is what it is. I would love for Afghanistan to have a communist revolution in the great 2026. I would love for the workers to rise up, do communism. I would love the Marxist-Leninist Republic of Afghanistan to emerge. In lieu of that, I don't know how strong my feelings are either way. Okay, it's not great. But you know, is any Western capitalist society gonna be? Whatever. You get it. You get what I mean, right? You guys, you know what I mean? You guys understand what I'm saying here? Is it making sense? I don't have really, really strong feelings about that, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to feel bad about it. So yeah. Okay, so let's get into what was going on before the Taliban took back control of Afghanistan. You hope you don't want Virgo to hear what I have to say, my non-feelings, my non-opinions about Afghanistan. Yeah. Hi, Kabashi. We never got it, not even close. Afghanistan veterans reflect on 20 years of war. For veterans who served in Afghanistan between 2001 and 2020, 5 of them, discuss their thoughts about how the conflict has evolved from the first deployments to Biden's decision to withdraw U.S. forces to the Taliban takeover. Oh, Virgo had a family emergency. Okay. All right, so the last U.S. soldier to leave Afghanistan boarded a plane on August 30th, 2021. I guess we gotta believe him. In the nearly 2 decades of war that preceded, more than 775,000 U.S. service members deployed to the country at least once. Malrish, there's a travel vlogger called Mikiok that goes to places that people generally consider really dangerous or threatening because of racism. He traveled through Afghanistan. Oh, I saw that actually. I actually did see that. Yeah. I do remember that. Yeah. Hi, Kunstler. So, what do people think about this? We've got some opinions here. The discussion has been edited and condensed. Let's get into it. First, we've got Justin Sapp, and here's what he said. When things started in 2001, I went in advance with the CIA paramilitary teams in the middle of October. At that time, the war was very much an unconventional warfare kind of domain. We were the only guys on the ground. All told, there were probably less than 20 people. The definition of the campaign wasn't fully formed. It was all being put together. So I had a pretty heady time. It was all new. It was all unique. We were new to the Afghans. They were new to us. We had broad guidance. And the guidance was to enable the Northern Alliance to defeat the Taliban and destroy Al-Qaeda. And that was it. It was sort of like, the first chapter of the book, and then hopefully you knew the last chapter of the book, but everything in between was very much ill-defined. It was sort of an adventure. Okay, not very interesting. All right, then we got Jahara Frankie Matisik. When I first started flying cargo missions there in 2008, I had a very narrow tactical view of the country because I never really had to deal with any of the locals. It was basically deliver troops, take troops home, do helicopter swap outs. It felt like it was a bureaucratized sort of routine war. I remember thinking of my first combat mission, we have to get all mentally pumped and prepped. And it was like, nope, FedEx is flying in there. It was not that big of a threat or a deal, flying into the bases for the most part. It felt like the bulk of my missions from 2008 to 2011, especially 2010, were when the ground forces in Afghanistan were getting ambushed and IED'd all the time. I spent a good chunk of 2010 and 2011 just transporting mine-resistant ambush protected vehicles. They looked like those big Humvee vehicles that protect the folks inside. I probably did around 40 or 50 missions just transporting those things to Kandahar and Bagram. Being sent back to Afghanistan in 2020 kind of confirmed my suspicions. The Afghan National Defense Security Forces basically is still a paper army, much like when the Soviets built up their version of the Afghan army in the 1980s. When COVID basically shut down Afghanistan in March of 2020, it seemed like it was almost a relief to a lot of the advisors and trainers. Like, sweet, now we really don't have to see them anymore because of COVID. We're just going to do VTC, video teleconference, and FaceTime, and just do all of our advising through WhatsApp, texting, and video calls. I think it was a nail in the coffin. We were already so risk-adverse that it almost made it easier. Now there's almost no chance of losing any U.S. or NATO troops to the Taliban or insider attacks. On my way out in October, I'm like, once we finally pull out of this thing, if we're actually going to follow through on this, the Afghan Air Force is just going to collapse. They're so dependent on U.S. military and contractors basically providing air power. Jess Gonzalez, I had a very different experience. As a combat cameraman, I supported every aspect of the Marine Corps. I did female engagement teams, I did mortuary affairs, I did logistics, I did helicopter drops, I did helicopter recoveries. I've been around the whole country. I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience of the regular warfighter, the junior enlisted, the suck. We're here, we got to do it, and then we're going back home. Being on the enlisted side, you don't understand the policy. You go through your pre-deployment training, and you understand what your little piece is within the counterinsurgency and all of that. But you feel like a little piece in the game, and not someone who's able to see the whole board. The Bin Laden raid happened in Pakistan while I was there. I remember coming off a convoy, and everyone's talking, whispering, and watching the news on their computers. And I was like, what's going on? And they're like, Bin Laden's dead. There's some silence. My other photographer that I worked with was like, well, I guess I get to go home now. There was crazy morale boost for a little bit. Toward the end of my time, I was in the 2nd Marine Logistics Group. Oh, Malrish. Blaming the Taliban for the poppy fields is questionable also. John Kirikow has talked about how he's spoken to farmers and the farmers told him it was the CIA assets that were making them grow poppy. I don't believe him for everything, but I do believe him when he's shitting on the rest. No, I actually think that's true. I've seen other people remark that the CIA was making Afghanistan grow poppies as well. We should look that up, actually, because I've seen people say that too. We actually have a Washington Post article that might be interesting to read on that. Okay. 100 streak Kubashi. Did Kubashi leave again? Did they just come for their streak? 95. 95 streak. We're on 95. Okay. So Jess goes on, towards the end of my time, I was with the 2nd Marine Logistics Group. We saw a lot of infrastructure getting built. We completed Route 1 that connected to Route Red, were 2 major roads within Helmand Province. I had some friends that deployed last year. They said the roads are completely destroyed now. That's a little disheartening to hear. This is from 2021. Because it was this huge accomplishment to attach those 2 roads. Jason Dempsey says, when I was moving in January 2009, it was part of the precursor to what began known as the Afghan Surge. The mentality both of the military and our political leadership was that we were getting back to good war. This was an assumption that the military had become competent at counterinsurgency and had been a learning institution over the previous 8 years. I was pretty gung-ho to get to Afghanistan and get after these problems. Being there that year was fairly rewarding, albeit frustrating. But to be clear, by the time I got back in 2012, 2013, the entire mission was essentially a failure. The question was, to what degree was it a failure and where did the blame fall? I spent years thinking about it, finding out more and more that the blame fell squarely on the shoulders of the American military. We decided to mirror image our army structure on a nation and country that simply was not set up for that. Instead of doing what needed to be done, we just did the mission we wanted to do. Phil says, yeah, pretty similar to the last guy. I did think we had more expertise in military capability than we had early on. There was a series of events in deployment that made me realize the reality of the situation. I saw a number of things that made me question the viability of our strategy over the long term. I believe then, and I still do believe, that counterinsurgency can work, but on a timeline and commitment I don't think is realistic for the United States. What I came out of deployment trying to do was make the piece of Afghanistan I could touch a little bit of a better place, make the lives of the people I dealt with a little bit better, and try not to focus on the larger effort and shoulder the responsibility. I do think we helped people, but I think we made a lot of progress, but at the end of the day, I don't think it was sustainable. When I went back in 2014, it was a very different environment. The combat mission was ending. The sense I got there was a lot of frustration in the military ranks because there was concern about artificial thresholds and micromanagement from Washington. We're literally trying to count billets to figure out how could they keep a unit viable with 5 people in uniform replacing the rest with civilians and contractors. How many helicopters could they have at any given base? So you're basically like, this isn't going to work. Okay, so let's keep going. They keep talking. The Taliban's moving into a phase. We made a lot of efforts to pacify villages that were more hostile to us. We made some success. Some people were assassinated. All right. So one of the things that we as a society have underestimated over the lifespan of the conflict is just how psychological of a conflict it was. And all wars are psychological, but I think in the military in particular, our default perspective is to focus on the military side of the conflict and achieving the objectives that have been set out for us. And at the end of the day, the thing that really affected our operations is the sentiment that people had on the ground there about our commitment and how long we would stay. We failed to convince people from the average Afghan on the street all the way up to the government and military leaders that we were committed. So everybody there kind of knew it was a waste, right? We have to ask, in what circumstance did we think that the Afghans were going to be able to maintain a fleet of nearly 100 Black Hawk helicopters without massive external support? Okay, so, and people died, obviously. This is what went on. Okay, so there's 2 more things I want to touch on before we get onto map. A veteran considers America's moral failure in Afghanistan and its own culpability. So this person's thinking about 2012 when they were there. And they were a junior public affairs officer headed to cover a joint NATO-Afghan conference at Camp Julian on the coalition's IED device strategy. Okay, so he's like, it's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. All right. The dizzying speed with which the Afghan government fell took many experts off guard. Had they been present at that conference 9 years ago, perhaps they would have been less surprised. Our meeting was a microcosm of every dysfunction of the Afghan state and of our military strategy. Afghan Ministry of Interior officials clashed with Ministry of Defense officials over trivial matters of protocol. Senior American and European officers spent hours debating the merits of the literacy requirements for Afghan explosive ordnance disposal, and Afghan generals demanded expensive equipment of dubious tactical value for a counterinsurgency. So I just want to take a second. There's something we can learn from this. What made their organizational strategy a failure just based on this example alone? Really think about this example alone. They're spending too much time debating things that seem relatively inconsequential, right? They're going over the merits of a literacy requirement. They're demanding expensive equipment, etc., etc. This is why we do democratic centralism and why it works as Marxists. So our meetings don't turn into this. So our systems do not turn into this. So we can move with efficiency, right? So reading this, I'm just like, oh, this would never happen in my org, right? And I think that's something important for us to remember. During a question and answer portion, an Afghan lieutenant stood and asked his superiors why none of the families of the man he had lost had received the benefit pay they were entitled to. None of the senior Afghan officers could give an answer. Do you know who does take care of the families of their fallen? Said the U.S. Army captain sitting next to me. The Taliban. The 2001 invasion and ensuing occupation of Afghanistan propped up a government far more open and far less brutal than its Taliban predecessor. Its relative liberalism was accompanied by a spectacular level of corruption and incompetence in both security forces and civil services. Bribery was endemic. Theft of military equipment commonplace. Morale among the regular military and police forces virtually non-existent. Perhaps the intelligence professionals who predicted Afghan forces would hold out longer did not consider that soldiers are unlikely to be willing to die for a government that fails to properly pay, feed, and equip them. Absent the Afghan commandos, the vast majority of the security services were completely unprepared to fight a war on their own. Of course, the partisan recriminations surrounding our withdrawal commenced instantly. Thus far, however, the Biden administration has held firm. American troops cannot and should not be fighting and dying in a war that Afghan forces are, by and large, not willing to fight and die in themselves. I didn't realize he looks so soulless in the eyes. This is what being a segregationist Zionist will do to you. Soulless eyes. I find that hard to argue with. In fact, I agree with it wholeheartedly. If 1/5 of a century, trillions of dollars, and thousands of lives of American servicemen were an insufficient commitment to purchase legitimacy for the Afghan government, the better question is why we didn't leave earlier. Much will be made by historians and politicians of the strategic failure of Afghanistan. What I hope we do not lose sight of is the abject moral failure of the adventure. There is blame to go around. As a society, we claim to venerate the military, but for 20 years, every politician and every disinterested civilian barely questioned a status quo that demanded our military families bear the burden of multiple crushing deployments for a cause that long ago became incoherent. Now, this can be hard for us to hear because we understand the U.S. Military, those are agents of empire. They enact violence on the world on behalf of U.S. capital, right? Global capital. But as we've talked about when we've read Lenin on the armed forces and revolution, a lot of military members get radicalized by their experiences in the military. And those are people we welcome into our movements. And we never make apologies for the things they've done. But we recognize that the horror of the things they've done has been what has radicalized them, and yet radicalization is useful to our movement, not just in bringing them there, but in their ability to speak on it to other people. They carry a certain legitimacy with certain members of the working class, people who are not yet sufficiently class conscious. And to hear from a military member, hey, this is all bullshit, right? And defending me doesn't mean defending the U.S. military. The U.S. military wanted to hurt me. That carries a lot of weight. And so I think that's important to remember, just again, that a lot of people are radicalized by this. They don't know, and then they enter and they go, oh, I understand the way the world works now. And they come to us. And that's why it's good for us to have a good framework for how we receive former military members who have been radicalized by these experiences and the places they have in our communities, right? And unlike some less disciplined leftist ways of thought, we understand the role that the armed forces play in the revolution, right? So just an important thing for us to remember. Lenin wrote about it, and I think we have some Theory Thursdays up about it. So he goes on and says, much of what will be made by historians and politicians of the strategic failure of Afghanistan, he says this, okay, there's blame to go around. We venerate the military. They don't take care of us. Here in the end game, we continue to fail the moral test in dazzling fashion. President Joe Biden spoke of those Afghans not willing to fight, but what of those who did and risked everything to help us? Thanks to the administration's foot-dragging and equivocating, we stood to abandon thousands of brave Afghans who served as interpreters for coalition troops. Their fate will be horrific. The betrayal of biblical proportions, a permanent stain on the honor of the country. Now, we know this didn't happen, actually. The Taliban was pretty cool about it. Some people in the U.S. military were worried. For my part, I try not to lose sight of my own culpability. As a willing participant in a support role, I bear more than most. The very nature of my job is to put the brightest sheen on the debacle. I know whatever penance I do for my role in selling the war will be insufficient. But now, a new terror is keeping me up at night. I think of the imagery I captured, shots of training sessions or patrol attached to lousy press releases that live somewhere in the recesses of the Defense Visual Information Distribution Service's website. How many of the Afghan faces I captured in those pictures are now fearing for their lives? Will a photo I took betray them to the Taliban as a collaborator? To my Afghan colleagues, I can only offer you my personal shame. I, like my country, betrayed you in the end. Okay, so thankfully we know this was on my birthday in 2021. This didn't end up being a thing. That's good. The Taliban didn't really do that. But these were legitimate concerns at the time, right? People were worried about, and they were right to be concerned about. Who knows? It could have gone very differently. Now, the last thing we're going to end with before we get into MAP is just a little overview following up on the CIA's involvement in poppies. The Washington Post has a story inside the CIA's secret mission to sabotage Afghanistan's opium. Now, this is not what I think it was Malrich and I were talking about, where there have been stories that the CIA was actually growing poppies for heroin production in Afghanistan. And not just there, all around the world. We know Air America was transporting a lot of this stuff. I think we can probably find something about that. Hold on. Let's see if we can find it. Ah! Give me a second. Oh, there's so much good stuff here. There's so much good stuff here. Oh my god. Okay, well, we're going to read a few. Sorry. I might be a little late today because this stuff's so interesting. You work directly with Afghan refugees. Their families were targeted. People were disappeared. I get what you're approaching this nuance. Some of the articles are such too optimistic, I know. But that's good to know, Amanda Ops. Thank you for sharing that. So they were right to be concerned, yeah. Yeah, I think they did say in one of the articles that for the most part it had happened on the scale that they were afraid of, but it did happen to some people. So that is good for us to remember. Some people did face retaliation for collaborating with the U.S. Yeah, that is true. Thank you for remembering that. Or reminding us to remember that in that context. Taliban announced poppy production ban in Afghanistan. Afghanistan's ruling Taliban on Sunday announced a ban on harvesting poppies, even as farmers in some parts of the country began extracting the opium from the plant that is needed to make heroin. This is from that story. The ban is reminiscent of the previous Taliban rule in the late 90s when the movement espoused a harsh interpretation of Islam and outlawed poppy production. At the same time, the ban was implemented countrywide within 2 years, according to the UN. After the ouster of the Taliban in 2001, farmers in many parts of the country returned to poppy production, and you can earn upwards of $300 a month as a day laborer for harvesting and extracting the opium. Today, Afghanistan, this was back in what year is this? 2022. Okay. They say, today Afghanistan is the world's largest producer of opium, despite billions of dollars spent by the international community during its 20 years in Afghanistan to eradicate the drug. In 2021, before the Taliban takeover, Afghanistan produced more than 6,000 tons of opium, which the UN Office on Drugs and Crime said could potentially yield 320 tons of pure heroin. So this is before the Taliban came back into power. They were producing more than 6,000 tons of opium in Afghanistan, and some people have said, yeah, that the CIA helped facilitate this. I guess including the Curacao guy. I don't know. Bye, Tarnish Shibboleth. Yeah, Amanda, I'm also glad that the scale wasn't as bad as it could have been, but I do appreciate you adding in that reminder for us. Okay, so Washington apparently spent more than $8 billion trying to eradicate poppy production in Afghanistan in nearly 20 years. Nearly 80% of heroin produced from Afghan opium reaches Europe through Central Asia and Pakistan. All right, that's what's going on. Now, we have more stories. And we have a frontline story. All right, let's read this. Mid-1970s. Saigon Falls. Okay, frontline. So just Saigon Falls. Right, the communists have won in Vietnam. The heroin epidemic subsides. The search for a new source of raw opium yields Mexico Sierra Madre, Mexican mud. Temporarily replaces China white heroin until 1978. The U.S. and Mexican governments find a means to eliminate the source of blah blah poppy, they're saying. In Afghanistan and Pakistan, it creates the Golden Crescent area, right? Creating a dramatic upsurge in the production of illegal heroin trade. Where's the Air America stuff, though? I want to find... This was not what I was hoping it would be. So, we know that Air America at this time was transporting drugs, allegedly, around the world, right? I have some podcast stuff about this. So for those of you who don't know what Air America is, it was an airline owned by the CIA, no big deal, that was very active during the Vietnam War. Air America, flying for the U.S. and profit. It was a private company that the CIA owned. And they have been alleged to have transported massive amounts of drugs all around the world, made by groups that the CIA was working with to advance a political aim, and like the trade-off was that the CIA helped them basically move drugs around the world. Yeah, allegedly. Just covering my bases there. I have a podcast episodes all about Air America. I do recommend listening to them if you don't know about Air America. It's a wild one, and they are very good podcast episodes. They're some of my favorite podcast episodes I've ever made. The podcast is Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. Definitely check it out. I like these episodes a lot. They will tell you a lot about the way the world works. So they're saying here, Air America works hand in hand with the U.S. Air Force. That's true. But they also literally were a private company. Some people working at Air America didn't even know that they were employees of the U.S. government. So Air America, they say, is commonly considered an arm of the CIA. In Laos, the CIA, in the past 10 years or more, has maintained an army of hill tribesmen. Those are mostly the Hmong population, mainly Thai and Lao mercenaries, and their travel and transport has been handled by Air America. Yeah, it's a lot. Okay, so conflict between two government agencies aids heroin smugglers. So Air America is very, very involved in all of these juicy stories, as we know. Ruling class weapon. These are all from the CIA's reading room, by the way. War and Heroin, an Expensive Habit. The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, which was a book. You can read the entire book. Very, very interesting book. This is just an article about the book. I'm trying to look for anything specifically about Afghanistan that might be in here, because this ties in. Is the government a partner in Red China's death trade? Oh, I can't show that. Sorry. Okay. I'm like, do we have anything about Afghanistan? There has to be something. This is about the politics of heroin, yet again. So the idea that the CIA might have been involved in heroin in Afghanistan, we're just going to say has a historical basis that is documented in reality. Right? I think that's maybe just like the diplomatic and fair way to word this. Soviet accuses CIA of heroin policy. I believe him. Oh my God, look at this. Look at this graphic. CIA, dope, and then we've got racism, poison. Wow, that's a graphic. The title, The Politics of Heroin. Yeah, as Mallory says, Air America was probably just one part of a massive heroin pipeline, if we had to guess. Yeah,
It doesn't exist anymore, but the whole point of what we're saying is that we have documentation of the CIA being involved in, allegedly, heroin all around the globe. So the idea, and we know that through Air America in the past, it's very well documented because it doesn't exist anymore. So we get a lot of declassified documents about things once they're deemed no longer a threat to national security. So that's why we now know a lot about the USSR, because the USSR doesn't exist anymore. We now know a lot about Air America, because Air America doesn't exist anymore. But the whole point of this is just saying there's a historical precedent for that. So for the CIA to be cultivating heroin in Afghanistan, we know that there's allegations of the CIA being involved in heroin trade back in Vietnam, in all sorts of different places. So, yeah, that's kind of just the point of doing all of this, is that it's not surprising. Because I thought I remembered Air America doing drop-offs in Afghanistan, like them being part of their transport route. So that's what I'm looking for back in the day. So this would be something that would have gone back down even to, the United States versus the Mujahideen and things like that going on. Like, there'd be, like, this historical precedent going back a while, I thought. No, I do not do tarot. Anybody telling you it's me and then trying to sell you things, that's a bot. That's a scam bot. Ignore it. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in anything metaphysical. So I thought I had remembered Air America and Afghanistan having some crossover. Yeah, no, that's fake. Don't fall for that. Laos. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to find it now before we run out of time. But interesting, if you want to look up CIA shenanigans as it relates to heroin trade, there is a lot. And the only thing we really found was CIA's secret mission to sabotage Afghanistan's opium. Apparently, the Caracal guys saying no, we were growing opium there. That does seem to be more true based on what I know about how the CIA has interacted with heroin in the past. So this is not going to be something we have time to read, but is an interesting component of the story. And then the Taliban got rid of heroin. So there you go. All right. Okay. With that said, let's get into map. We're running a little late. We got 15 minutes to get into map, but I think we can do it. I think we can do map. Are you guys ready to do map? Are we ready for map? Been a really low energy today. I'm sorry, guys. I think it's been an interesting episode, though. I think it's been really interesting. DMing people for tarot. I will read your tarot. You know what's actually funny is I did kind of lie to you guys. Because while I am an atheist and I don't believe in tarot, I do know how to give tarot card readings. Because of my mom. My mom is not an atheist. She's very, she kind of invented her own religion that was like a combination of Wicca and Catholicism. And she likes ritual-based spiritual practice. So she did teach me how to, so I do have tarot cards. And I do them for my friends sometimes, but I don't believe in that. And that's not a thing I would ever take money for. So that's just a random bit of lore about me. Okay, bye, counselor. So, yeah, I don't read my DMs also. I'm an atheist, but I do give tarot readings. I do not read my DMs now. That's why it's too when people are like, go watch this guy's video he made about you. I'm like, I cannot explain to you. And that is not going to happen for me. I can't even read a DM. You want me to go watch a random video about me? My attention span will not allow for that. It's not going to happen. Okay, should we do Sri Lanka? Should we do Sri Lanka? What do you guys think? Sri Lanka? Let's do Sri Lanka. Let's do Sri Lanka. Let's get into what's going on in Sri Lanka today. I'm going to pull up the usual suspects for us. I don't know much about Sri Lanka. I know a little, not a lot. I often find that I remember more as I go. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Which is interesting. There's a lot of countries in the world. You guys know there's like almost 200 countries. Oh, no. Uh-oh. Don't do the communist leadership to me. Okay, so Sri Lanka is not a part of the NATO Super Friends Alliance. So no worries about that. What do we got going on in Sri Lanka? The U.S. government spent a lot of money there. Spent $1.3 million there last year. That's a lot. Yeah, I don't read my DMs. I'm so sorry. Sometimes if I'm on and someone messages me at the moment I'm on, I'll see it and I'll be like, oh yeah. So sometimes you'll get a reply from me from that, but it's very, very rare. I wish I could say I'm better at text, but I'm not. I have 20 unread texts right now. I know some people have more, but like mine aren't spam. They're people I'm like, I need to get back to that person. It's pretty bad. Okay, so they put Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka all in one group. So we're very active there. We're very interested in taking Sri Lanka. The question is, have we? We don't like the government of Sri Lanka. We want them to change. We want it to be our guys. We want to get them in there. We're spending a lot of money there. We're spending over $1 million a year there, which, remember, propaganda is really cheap. So that's a big deal. That's a lot of money for propaganda. Bridging divides in Sri Lanka. Okay, we're saying they had anti-Muslim riots. All right. Attacks on churches and hotels. Okay. We have China's control over Sri Lanka port city and Russian sanctions evasion through Sri Lankan officials. Oh, we got a raid. Vorlo raid. Hi. Hello. Wait, I missed it. NATO Legion of Doom. Yes. Helmut Scussler. The one time. Welcome, everybody. Hello. All right. We're doing Sri Lanka on our map right now. We're learning about Sri Lanka. The United States really wants in there. We really don't like them. Russia is using Sri Lanka to evade sanctions. China's got ports going on there. Sri Lanka's all up with China and Russia. It feels like they're defiant vibes, is my guess. And we're spending $1.3 million there per year. It's a lot of money. We're mapping them. Okay, DPRK sent help to the Tamils to fight against the Sri Lankan genociders. Interesting. Let me look at that. You think they're going to be a Poland? We got a lot of Poland in this region. We got a lot of Poland going on. Okay. U.S. military intervention? Yes. Gaza ceasefire? Yes. Russia withdrawal? Abstain. But they're doing bad. But they're an evil. There is disinfo out there. The claims that DPRK was helping Sri Lanka in their genocide of the Tamils is bullshit. Okay. But Sri Lanka did genocide the Tamil. Here we go. The VOA, American Slopaganda. North Korea may have aided Hezbollah and Tamil Tigers. Like, that's a bad thing. All right. North Korea may have provided more recent support for Hezbollah. Japanese newspaper report in September that Pyongyang sold arms to the Tamil Tiger rebels in Sri Lanka. Okay. So, very interesting. We're gonna ye old wiki their current government just for some basics. So, semi-presidential republic determined by the Sri Lankan Constitution. It was formed in 1978, very recent. Okay, under the current constitution, the leader, they have a president, the president of Sri Lanka. They have an executive branch. The current president is Anura Kumara Dissanayake. National People's Power. Okay. All right. We're learning the basics. The Tigers weren't great either. Kind of Hamas situation. You don't know enough about the Tigers. Leader of Sri Lankan communists flew Israeli jets while committing the genocide of the Tamil people. You told me I wasn't going to be happy to learn about the communists there. I was not prepared for that. Okay. So, they have a Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. Are they actually socialists? No. Tits out for tankies, throwing back to our original topic. Makes sense for the CIA to be behind poppy production in Afghanistan because otherwise it would make sense for the Taliban to destroy all the poppy farms once they regain control of the region. Tamil genocide. Not monument. I don't need a monument. I need to know. A myth? Who's saying it's a myth? Ooh, Sinhalese Buddhist supremacist ethno-state. No, thank you for sharing that. Tits out for tankies. Okay. Um. Okay. Let's see what's going on with them. Well, they just we just sunk, not recently, but I guess like we did just, not just but recently. That's probably a better way to do it. Okay, Trump's MAGA effect on Sri Lanka. Oh, it was the first genocide recorded on camera phones. Why do people think it's not real? Killing fields of Sri Lanka. Oh, okay. That's crazy. Iran Ano made a good documentary going with the female genocide. Okay, cool. I mean, not cool, but like good to know. Okay, so Sri Lanka is also a destination for an increasing number of Israel tourists. More than 20,000 Lankans are working in Israel. Huh. Sri Lanka was getting a bunch of money from U.S. aid. We're still spending $1.3 million there every year. We want it. We want it for chat. 3-part docuseries on the genocide. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, a lot of Israel's tactics were learned from Sri Lanka and vice versa. But they denied the request to land 2 U.S. aircraft at their airport. What? We turned down the request to maintain Sri Lanka's neutrality. Huh. Sri Lanka recovers bodies from Iranian warship. Okay. Okay, declassified documents reveal Israel's longstanding support for Sri Lanka. This is from the Tamil Guardian. Yeah, this is all about their crossover. The documents underline Sri Lanka's immense appreciation for Israel's military assistance. One cable sent by Divan on May 21st, 1987 detailed the President's Secretary's disappointment with Western countries for their lack of military assistance. Both Sri Lanka and Israel are accused of conducting genocide and mass human rights atrocities against the Tamils and Palestinians, respectively. During the armed conflict, Sri Lanka indiscriminately bombed no-fire zones such as schools and hospitals, including by using Israeli weapons. These jets, for instance, were used to bomb the Centralite orphanage in 2006, killing dozens of Tamil schoolgirls. They pioneered double tapping as a strategy. Sri Lanka begins purchasing Russian oil. That doesn't really tell us much. Fuel. Enhanced tourism ties. Okay. Just doing general stuff. $275 Sri Lankans were killed fighting for Russia in Ukraine war. I don't know if that's real. According to data provided to Himal South Asian. What data? I don't know how real that is. What is this? Reuters. This Reuters headline's weird. Fuel-thirsty Asian countries line up for Russian oil. Why does it sound so weird? Energy cooperation. Okay. None of this is really that much of a thing. All right. So what's up with the current government? So obviously, Sri Lanka, evil, did genocide. What's going on with their current government? Is this a new government? Does anybody have any info on this? What's going on currently? Is it a different government? Same government? Do we have any thoughts on this? Anybody in chat have any info on this? The party is the National People's Power. They're still doing a genocide. There are still Tamil people there being violated. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Okay. Ugh. Why are people claiming that it's like a myth? Is it like the same way they claim like Palestinians aren't actually getting killed and say it's Pallywood? Is it like that? Okay, this one's from 2024. Public events celebrating the Tamil Tiger separatist group, which fought a no-holds-barred battle to establish an ethnic minority homeland, are illegal, and authorities have blocked past proposals, so you're not allowed to celebrate them. Decades-long war, which concluded in 2009 after a military offensive in the last Tiger stronghold that saw 40,000 civilians killed in its final months. The operation was condemned internationally for the indiscriminate bombardment of civilians. Oop, that's the timer. Tamil. The opposition party is akin to labor Zionists. Okay. Got it. Okay. So then the question is, where do they fit in on the global stage? Do they have... It seems like they have a functioning partnership with Israel still. Here is their main party. They say that they're Marxist-Leninist. No, they have a faction. They have factions that are Marxist-Leninist. What's going on here? The link you dropped seems to be a socialist perspective. Sri Lanka. Yeah, Chinese master Sri Lanka. Uh-huh. So they say they're left-wing populists. They have a Marxist-Leninist faction from it, but it's not actually the whole government. Huh. And the party was not seeking to punish perpetrators of war crimes in Sri Lanka. Huh. This is crazy. Democratic Socialists. The party leader flew jets in the genocide. The party leader, right? The party leader. That's right. You told me that. Ah! Oh, yeah. MIA Sri Lankan. Is MIA Tamil? Wait, where is it? I'm looking. Somebody said it. I'm reading it. Lesbian hot sauce side. If you remember, MIA was Tamil. She used to be passionate advocate for Tamil people. She's sadly become very MAGA-fied since COVID. Yeah, I've noticed that. I didn't realize she was Tamil. That makes a lot of sense. I knew she was Sri Lankan. Okay. So, I know. She got really weird about, like, vaccines, and it was, like, an alt-right pipeline that just made her, like, a weirdo. Many such cases. Aaron Anno has a great content on this, right? Grief Stricken Wednesday, yeah. So what does this mean for our map, chat? We've got a supposed left-wing populist government committing genocide. What was the reason for their what was the reason? What was what started this? What does this have to do with their role in geopolitics? Yeah, anti-5G clothing line. The anti-5G stuff kind of is funny to me, though, because I feel like it's, like, kind of a harmless conspiracy theory, to my knowledge. You know? Just like, okay. Is it rooted? Okay, let's see. 2013, Sri Lanka state today can only be described as dictatorship. I saw that one, Cordia. We've got that one pulled up. I want to know, though, like, where they fit into the global stage. Like, okay, they've got some stuff going on with Israel. Like, what's their role geopolitically? You know? What does this mean for map? What do the horrors of Sri Lanka mean for map? Poland. They have their own ongoing ethno-supremacist project. I don't understand them in relation to U.S. Western power. Right. They're buddies with Israel, but they're also doing deals with Russia. They're not good. Yeah. They're definitely not good. So the question is, are they compromised? Do they listen to the West? Or do they chart their own path? I mean, maybe Envra, but for our map, it's mostly just foreign policy based. It's not domestic based, you know? They trade a lot with Israel. Israel helps them do the genocide. So the question then is, do they trade those not enough, right? Because everybody trades with China. They're doing trade with Russia as well. They're not letting the U.S. use their land, so they're not totally compromised. So they might just be Poland, yeah. They have non-alignment. They claim to be non-aligned, but they're evil. They're not non-aligned good. They're evil. So I think they are Poland. I'm going Poland. Evil brat. Yeah, well, I was like, they're either a brat or they're Poland, because they're not fully compromised, because he wouldn't let the United States use their things. Israel helped them commit genocide, but then it's like, what is their role? Evil brat is kind of Poland. I think they might be Poland. They're like buddies, but they're not like compromised buddies. They're like, Israel helped them, and like, why? What was in it for Israel? Why did Israel help them? They've had a long relationship. Okay, this isn't... Yeah, I think they're Poland. I think they are getting Poland. Yeah, there's a lot of Polands. Right, this whole region has some Poland energy. We have 4 Polands now, chat. Pretty major. Yeah, okay. I feel good about this. If anybody has other thoughts... Yeah, we looked at that one, Maurish, yeah. Interesting. Do they help each other? Maybe. How many Polands needed for empire? Maybe well, they don't work with each other is the interesting thing. It's not like all the Polands help each other. They're all like, you know? Yeah. Poland. Okay. I think we're doing it. I think that's where Sri Lanka is. Very depressing. Thank you for giving me all the knowledge, comrades in the chat. I'm happy to learn. Sad to learn, but it's good to learn. Evil brat. Poland and evil brat, I kind of like. Let's end with a poll. Let's end with a Poland. 1 minute poll. This is your reward for staying in map. Vote now. Yeah, there is no short form learning. Yeah, I gotta look into this. Channel 4 documentary, Killing Fields of Sri Lanka. I'm very curious to do a deep dive in this at some point. You know, it's intense. It's intense. I do remember MIA though, and I knew she was Sri Lankan. I did know that. I knew there was a civil war, but I don't think I ever really learned beyond that. Yeah. Okay. This is good. This is good for me to learn about. I love being exposed to holes in my knowledge. There's a lot of countries. We're going to figure it all out. Most graphic and banned documentary ever. Wow. That's horrible. I might not be able to watch it. We'll see. Low turnout in the poll, Lind. 27 votes. Evil Brat has won with 29 votes. The lowest poll ever. A lot of people leave for MAP. A lot of people will go because they're like not into MAP. But we're so close to getting MAP done. I like need to finish MAP. You know what I mean? Like we have to finish MAP. I have to, or I'll die if we don't. You know, like for my brain, we have to. So, all right, that concludes today's stream. I can't wait to get to work. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Tomorrow is Thursday. We will be reading theory. Are you excited? I'm excited. I made some notes about theory I thought might be good for us tomorrow. What was my recommendation I added? Marx Capital, Chapter 25, Section 3, a Reserve Army of Labor. I thought that could be good for us. That's my rec. Maybe you got rec. Also, Lenin, The Three Sources of Marxism was a rec of mine for tomorrow. So we'll see. We shall see. All right. Let's get you over to Larry. Is Larry streaming? We're back on schedule? Yes, he said 3 sources is good, right? Yeah, I was like, you know, we should do that. We can graduate on. Not on. Not on. Okay, hold on one sec. I'm gonna look at Tank 2. Boom, boom. It's me. It's Rob. We'll send you to Rob Rousseau. All right, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your day. I'll miss you while I'm working. I'll think about you all. You all have a little right there in my heart. You're up there. That was my head. That's where my heart is too, though. It's all up there, actually. It's a medical anomaly. Okay, have a good one.